It's 1978 in Texas. Gas is cheap. Houses on Houston cul-de-sacs sell for $65,000, and on Friday nights, 20,000 fans pour into high school stadiums before heading to Gilley's or to church on Sunday. Blue-collar wages soar as millions chase the oil boom's promise. A state where pickup trucks fill new driveways and every day feels unstoppable. But beneath the glow, forces are shifting. How did life here feel so certain, only to transform in ways almost nobody saw coming? Oil changed everything. In 1973, a barrel of crude fetched $3.89. By 1980, the price soared past $35. That kind of money did not just fill up the rigs and refineries, it poured into every corner of Texas, from the Gulf Coast to the dusty edges of the Panhandle. The world's energy crisis meant Texas was suddenly on top, and it felt like the good times would never run dry. People came in waves. The state's population jumped from 11.2 million in 1970 to over 14 million by the end of the decade. Houston's skyline grew taller by the month. Dallas buzzed with new arrivals, and small towns swelled with folks chasing steady paychecks. Some came from Oklahoma or Louisiana, others from as far as Ohio or California, all drawn by the promise of work and the chance to stake a claim. The highways filled with U-Hauls and beat-up Chevys, but it was the pickups that told the real story. Every lot outside a refinery or a chemical plant seemed packed with F-150s and Silverados, most of them coated in a film of Gulf Coast dust. The jobs were hard, but the pay was solid. Blue-collar workers, pipe fitters, welders, and roughnecks could afford things their parents only dreamed about. Joe the pipe fitter, fresh off a night shift, could walk into a dealership and drive out in a new truck. He could buy a house on a cul-de-sac, send his kids to a school built with oil money, and take the family to Astroworld on weekends. For a while, it felt like there was no ceiling. The state budget ballooned, highways stretched wider, and everyone, from oil company executives to the guy pumping gas, shared in the windfall. The world needed Texas oil, and Texas answered the call, one barrel at a time. A refinery paycheck in the early 80s could unlock a front door in the suburbs. In Houston, a new brick ranch house with a two-car garage and a patch of St. Augustine grass might set you back $60,000 or $70,000. Dallas prices ran higher. By 1985, the average home there cost over $50,000 more than the national average. But for families arriving in Texas, that kind of money still felt within reach. There was no state income tax to eat into take-home pay, and in Houston, City Hall never bothered with zoning laws. If a developer could dream it, they could build it. Cul-de-sacs, strip malls, and master-planned neighborhoods stretched toward the horizon, each one promising a fresh start and a fenced backyard. Closing day was a rite of passage. A family might pile into a Monte Carlo or a Ford LTD, sign the papers, and walk across a tile foyer into a world of harvest gold appliances, wood-paneled dens, and shag carpet soft under bare feet. Driveways filled with bass boats and station wagons. The promise of home ownership was more than just a roof. It was cookouts with neighbors, kids racing bikes on quiet streets, and the steady sense that tomorrow would be better than today. The boom made it all possible, mortgages felt manageable, and the future seemed as open as the Texas sky. But behind every front door, the dream was built on the same foundation: oil money flowing fast and the hope that it would never run dry. Friday nights in Texas, the whole town seemed to orbit around a football field. Stadiums built for 15,000 or even 20,000 fans filled up in places like Odessa or Midland, cities that barely doubled that number in population. Under those bright lights, the Permian Panthers became legends, their coaches pacing the sidelines like generals, every play carrying the weight of a town's pride. H.G. Bissinger's notebook would later capture it all in 1988. But for years before, the ritual was the same. Sons and daughters in black and white, bands blaring, the air thick with the smell of popcorn and diesel. In Dallas, the Cowboys took it further. By 1978, NFL Films had crowned them America's team. Roger Staubach led the huddle, and by the time he retired in 1980, Texas football meant something to the whole country. When the final whistle blew, Saturday nights belonged to the honky-tonks. Gilley's in Pasadena could pack in 6,000 people, earning a Guinness World Record as the world's largest. The dance floor thumped with boots and belt buckles, the mechanical bulls spinning under neon lights. Willie Nelson's voice drifted from jukeboxes and radios, his outlaw country sound as much a part of Texas as the dust on a pickup. Austin City Limits started airing on PBS in 1976, beaming Willie and his friends into living rooms across the state. Come Sunday morning, the pews filled just as surely as the bleachers had. By 1980, more than 2 million Texans belonged to Southern Baptist churches alone. The church bulletin was as important as the sports page, and the rhythms of faith, potlucks, choir practice, Sunday school anchored the week. In these rituals, whether played out on grass, hardwood, or stained glass, Texans found their sense of belonging, a way to know who they were and where they stood. Texas politics in the late 1970s still wore the old Democratic blue, but the seams were starting to show. For generations, almost every courthouse and state office belonged to a Democrat, conservative, sure, but still part of the party of Sam Rayburn and Lyndon Johnson. That changed in 1978 when William P. Clements, Jr., an oilman with a gravelly voice and a stubborn streak, won the governor's race. Clements didn't just squeak by. He built his campaign on the idea that Washington, especially under Jimmy Carter, was no friend to Texas oil. He called out Carter's energy rules as a direct threat to Texas jobs, and enough voters listened to put a Republican in the governor's mansion for the first time since Reconstruction. By 1980, Reagan was riding high on that same message. He talked about freedom, hard work, and the wide-open promise of the frontier. Texans saw a bit of themselves in Reagan's cowboy swagger and his talk of cutting government down to size. That November, Reagan won Texas by more than 500,000 votes, and his campaign rallies felt more like rodeos than political events. Boots, hats, and plenty of Lone Star flags waving in the crowd. Behind the scenes, young campaign hands like Karl Rove were starting to change the way Texas politics worked. Rove brought in new strategies, targeted mail, voter files, and a focus on turning out the right neighborhoods. In 1984, Phil Gramm, once a Democrat from College Station, switched parties and ran for the United States Senate as a Republican. Graham's win was more than just a personal victory. It was a sign that the old conservative Democrats were finding a new home. By the mid-1980s, Texas politics had a new playbook, one that would shape the state for decades to come. In 1986, the bottom dropped out. Oil prices crashed, and the revenue that once made Texas feel untouchable shrank almost overnight. State coffers that had been flush with oil and gas money, 28% of all government income just 5 years earlier, dwindled to 15%. The easy money dried up. Suddenly, it was not just roughnecks feeling the squeeze. Office towers in Houston emptied out. Construction cranes froze in place, half-finished projects gathering dust. For sale signs multiplied across suburb after suburb, and neighborhoods that had been full of life turned quiet. It hit everyone, from the big names to the blue-collar families. Former Governor John Connally, once the face of Texas power, watched his fortunes disappear. In a public auction, his Houston mansion and personal belongings went to the highest bidders, a reminder that even the mighty were not immune. Down the block, a family who had arrived in the boom years packed up their Monte Carlo, their dreams of a fresh start boxed alongside their kids' trophies and schoolbooks. The house they had worked for was repossessed. The future, once so certain, suddenly felt up for grabs. By 1987, food banks like the one in Houston were serving lines that stretched around the block. Volunteers handed out boxes of canned goods and day-old bread to folks who had never imagined needing a handout. The bust changed the rhythm of life. But even as the old ways faltered, new seeds took root. Universities in Austin and Dallas poured money into research and technology. The population kept growing, reaching nearly 17 million by 1990. A different kind of Texas was taking shape, one less tied to oil, and more to the promise of something new. Today, land that once sprouted mesquite and double-wides hosts tech parks and subdivisions, but the ache for belonging endures. Texas keeps rewriting itself, sometimes by choice, sometimes by necessity. The question isn't what's lost, but what's carried forward. Thanks for being here to remember. Share your memories below.